My name is Anna. I'm a mobile user experience and conversion specialist here at Google. I'm connecting now from my home in Dublin, and I'm really excited to share with you some insights on what makes a great mobile experience and how companies who have both a website and an app should approach their cross-platform strategy. I spent my whole life working with the latest user research, not just from our own labs, but all across the industry and even further afield, to ensure that the UX design principles and best practices that I talk about are all rooted in what we know users want and need. Now, so let's start with the problem statement. It is one of the most common questions that we hear in our daily work as UX consultants. If the company is having both a website and an app, are there any differences or similarities between the mobile web experience and an app experience? Does this question sound familiar? Then continue watching. Let's have a look into the user research. The user journey is increasingly multi-platform these days, and the lines between web and app continue to blur, especially for the user. They may start their journey on the web, then go to the app, and come back to the web again. And as it was mentioned in one of the live sessions by Oliver, web and app are complementary to each other. Both have strengths and benefits for users. So if you are doing both, then it's great and you can meet user needs in each part of the purchase life cycle. But when we talk about user experience that companies should have either on the web or on the app, I think this platform thinking approach is taking us a little bit away from understanding the real answer, which is the end user. So follow the user to get answer to your cross-platform strategy. And I'm saying follow literally because the way to do this would be to conduct a lot of user research. Ask users how they browse and shop online, watch them interacting with mobile devices, do a lot of field studies, and very important, look beyond just one purchasing session. Instead, look at their behavior over time to understand that cross-platform piece. Let's go through user behavior patterns and what are the 5 insights that we can get from those. At the very high level, we can break this down into 3 main pillars: designing cross-platform experience, designing for a mobile screen, and using general UI and CRO best practices along the way. We will go through the 2 tips about cross-platform, then 3 tips in mobile first, and then I will share with you the resources in the last section on general UI and CRO. As we have seen before, these days users tend to switch a lot between web and app. So it is the transition in between the two is something that you should be looking very closely at. The first tip would be to understand the cross-platform user journey and to optimize it. Some of the best practices from the design point of view here would be, first of all, to give your users a chance to explore the website. How many websites do we enter these days that would show like an instant pop-up or an overlay inviting you to download the app, like on this example here? Please give users some value and some time to explore the website. Don't show any kind of prompt, and especially a pop-up, in the first seconds of their website visit. Instead, in case you want to promote your app on your website, you need to do it in a non-intrusive way. Consider prompting already engaged users, for example, when they have viewed certain content or on their second visit, or make the prompt discoverable throughout the user journey by, for example, placing it in the side navigation bar. Also, prompts that look and feel as if they're part of the UI are more likely to be well perceived by a user. And on the final point here, we all know how important it is to use value proposition and visuals. So for example, icons, so do not hesitate to use those in the app prompts as well. Now, the next best practice of cross-platform and even cross-device experience is creating a personal space for the user where they will store the information and retrieve it from any device or any platform. Users may not be ready to finish the purchase or complete the action right now. They may want to do a little bit more research or just come back to what they found later. That is why, along with having a regular conversion flow, you can offer users a few alternative call to actions, like email me by basket or add items to guest checklist. The next question that we get on cross-platform user experience is how similar the design can be or should be, and which guidelines to follow on Android or on iOS. Well, the users will probably not switch between Android and iOS. However, as we already learned, they will likely switch between your website and your app. So the tip number 2 is that consistency of experience is much more important than adjusting to different local guidelines. Instead of separating your users into Android users, or web users, or iOS users, and developing different design systems for them, just think about them as people who probably just want to do the same thing, to buy your product on the smartphone. And if we take a closer look at Android and iOS design guidelines, and if we take out the navigation, then it's mostly interaction patterns and visual styling components. So those are not really that different. And in a lot of cases, it's just the same principle of good and intuitive design. And even if you look at the navigation part, in Google Material Design, there is a bottom navigation too. So you can go ahead and have one in your Android app if you already have it somewhere else, like on the mobile web, because first of all, you will prioritize consistency for your users. And second, well, it is a good ergonomic location for mobile device in general, since it's very easy to reach. And I want to finish the cross-platform part of this presentation with few solutions that you can use everywhere, on the web, on Android, and on iOS. The first one is easy checkout with Google Pay. It lets customers skip the forms completely and purchase in just a few clicks. We also recommend checking out Google's sign-in solutions under the link here on the slide. It helps improve your sign-up and sign-in experience on the web and in the app. Now, here are the 2 case studies from customers who have implemented Google Pay. Starbucks were so pleased with the customer adoption of Google Pay in the Starbucks mobile app that they have extended it into their auto-reload platform. It was a really popular choice by their customers. Vueling saw a 17% increase in conversion after implementing Google Pay on their mobile website. Now that we are clear that we don't think platforms, but we think more devices, let's talk about what it means to design for mobile. The tip number 3 is to design for a shorter attention span. Well, you all know the tale about the average internet user having an attention span shorter than a goldfish. Well, I have bad news for you. The attention span of a smartphone user is even shorter. It is much easier to get distracted from the task on the phone, as user may receive an incoming call or a text message or a push notification. So how do you survive in this attention economy that we currently live in? Well, first of all, by prioritizing the right content in the above default space. The majority of people will form their opinion about your product from the content that they see above default. So always make sure there are 3 elements present there. A very clear value proposition which would talk up to the user about what they can do on this specific page. Then at least one of the call to actions, so the user is clear what to do. And some visuals illustrating just what's going on. And sometimes if the page is really high up the funnel, it's also a good idea to display high-level categories of all services and products that you have to create a positive first-time impression of your business and website functionality. Now, given that users already have short attention spans, if you interrupt them, then the chances of them succeeding with the task you're giving them are even lower. That is why for any prompts, whether you want to ask user to rate the app or to subscribe to your newsletter, you need to apply the same rules of non-interruptive prompts that we discussed in the very beginning. Making sure the prompt appears at a good time, it looks and feels as if it's part of the UI, and it contains the value proposition and some visuals. Here is a great A/B test result from the eBay Classifieds apps team. They have introduced push notification prompt after the user has completed the task, after they posted an ad online. As a result, the opt-in rate for push notifications has increased significantly, and they have rolled out this change across the entire product. And the last thing on the attention span. As you may know, the real speed may be different from perceived speed in the eyes of the user. For example, things may slow down when people are anxious or rushed, or when they are on the move, which is quite often the case when they use a smartphone, right? So with that in mind, you need to help your users to wait by occupying their time. You can add some meaningful animations to the UI of your app or the website, like progress bars or skeleton screens. That's going to signify the progress in system response time and engage with the user in every second of their experience. Now, the tip number 4, which is also related to mobile first principles, is design for mobile ergonomics. Design for the way people hold or use device and interact with it. As we already mentioned before, bottom of the screen on mobile devices is considered to be a good ergonomic location. It is easier to reach when you're holding the device with just one hand. So consider collocating the key calls to action there, bottom navigation as well, or anchoring modal pop-ups on the bottom too. One more thing about mobile devices to remember. It is quite a small screen for relatively large fingers. Make sure all touch targets are large enough, reduce the number of touch targets per screen overall, and show only the ones that are relevant in this very moment. Don't forget other solutions listed here on the slide, for example, showing the right keypad, using autofill, or suggesting input for the user, as it makes typing on mobile so much easier. Here is a case study of Eastpak. They've decided to test showing auto suggestions with popular email domains, and as a result, the bounce rate has decreased by 18% on their mobile website. Now, finally, the tip number 5 here is that you need to design reliable experience, apps and websites that work fast and in all states. Since mobile users are always on the go, they may be experiencing connectivity or speed issues, or they just may have no time to browse. So it is important to always be there for the user. The first important thing is to design the offline mode for both web and app. You can check out the link here on the slide to get more ideas on what the offline can look like for you. There are a lot of best practices for multiple industries on how you can be useful for the user when they are offline. Another way to always be there for the user is to implement instant support options into your mobile website or an app. Users may be in the moment when they don't just have time to search for the information themselves, or they face a certain barrier. And given that users are already on the phone, You can offer them an alternative way to interact with your brand, like, for example, calling a customer support with just one tap or opening a chat with an operator. We've listed few tips on your cross-platform UX strategy and few tips to make sure that for both mobile web and an app, you are using mobile-first principles. But we also want to share some general UI and CRO best practices on top of that. On this slide, you can find a few initiatives that the Google UX and Conversions team has been working on over the last few years. These are great resources where you can find best practices for industry-specific user journeys, general UI and UX principles, A/B testing ideas, and few frameworks to implement within your design organization. Now, I already mentioned today Google Material Design, and it is also a collection of UI best practices that you can use. These guidelines are based on principles of tangible surfaces, meaningful motion, and classic traditions of print-like graphic design. Every single surface is considered to be a piece of digital paper, and it responds and interacts with other elements of the UI, just in a way like actual piece of physical surface would do. This looks very intuitive and helps users to recognize the interface instantly. Adopting these principles allows brands, first of all, to follow best practices of good UI. Second, to express their brand identity within the visual language of a lot of possibilities. And third, to save time on defining those principles of good and intuitive UI yourself. Check out the resources here on the slide to get inspired by the Google material. Now that's it from me today. Here is the list of all ideas that we've discussed. Some of these principles are about the fact that user journey is multi-platform. Some of these ideas are guidelines of the mobile-first design. And don't forget about the general UI and CRO best practices. And if there's one thing that I would like you to take away from today, it is don't think platforms, but rather think users. And look at the way they are interacting with your brand over time, across different platforms, how they interact with mobile devices, and make sure you're always addressing their expectations. Thank you.